We have breaking news as it's official. The New York Rangers have pulled off a heist. Chris Kreider has officially been traded to the Anaheim Ducks, and the return in this trade will have Rangers fans fired up, and some Rangers fans mourning this day because one of the best players in franchise history has been traded. We're going to break it all down in this episode of Rangers Digest. But before we do that, a quick reminder to hit that subscribe button. About 74% of you who watch these videos aren't subscribed to the channel, so this is the place to be for all your daily New York Rangers content. So go down below, hit that free subscribe button, and again, you get to stay up to date with everything that's happening with the New York Rangers. But Bret, seems like the trade that would never happen. It was the ever ongoing trade at this point. It's been spanning 2 days, but it's finally gone through. By all accounts, it hasn't been officially reported, at least from the New York Rangers or the Anaheim Ducks, but all the insiders have it right now. Elliotte Friedman as well. Larry Brooks was the first one to break it this morning that Chris Kreider has officially signed off on his no trade clause, and he will be headed to Anaheim. And one thing I wanted to mention quickly before I hand it off to you as well is that, he did a lot of his homework, and, one of the destinations that he was open to going to was Anaheim because of Jacob Trouba as well being there. So obviously they've been working together, his camp and the New York Rangers and Chris Drury, for quite some time. I think that, Chris Kreider knew that this trade was coming. So he was just, doing his due diligence over the last couple of days. But it is official. This trade is going through and Chris Kreider has been traded. Bret, how do you feel about it? And we'll get into all the specifics of the trade in just a minute.
Yeah, Darius, thank God it's finally official because it's been extremely stressful just waiting and waiting and waiting. But finally, now we get to talk about it here. And the most important thing is that Chris Kreider has officially signed off on the deal, which is extremely important because as we've reported the last few days, obviously Anaheim was one of those teams on his no trade clause. But as you mentioned, as he started to look at the situation more in depth, guys like Jacob Trouba, Ryan Strome, Frank Vetrano, a couple of his friends, ex-Rangers, the situation just started to make a bit more sense in comparison to be put on waivers. So Chris Kreider will be traded here to the Anaheim Ducks, and I'm sure the Rangers will make an official announcement sometime today, but it is official. It's a bittersweet day for a lot of Rangers fans out there, and now that it's official, it's finally going to sink in, and I am actually looking forward to this new era of Rangers hockey. Two things could be true, folks. We could appreciate Chris Kreider and all he's done for the New York Rangers organization, but we could also appreciate the fact that Chris Drury has a new vision. This team is forward thinking, and we need a change because we've seen this team at its best. And as we mentioned yesterday, they've had success, but it hasn't been good enough. The goal is to win a Stanley Cup, which is something we haven't done since '94. So something has to change. And Chris Kreider, I wish him the best of luck. No ill will towards him. A great Ranger, longest tenured Ranger. I saw a lot of great moments from him, but it's a new era for Rangers hockey. And not in this video, but some videos down the line, we're going to break down what this team could look like because they could have some stars up and down the first, second, and third line with this new cap space that they're going to have available. So it's a bittersweet day for Rangers fans here.
Absolutely. And you brought it up before. I mean, he's a fantastic player, but now this opens up the floodgates and maybe the first domino to fall. And again, you've brought it up in the past that, maybe it was Jacob Trouba last season, but this is the floodgates opening. This is really the biggest domino to fall where now they have a lot more cap flexibility. It isn't updated yet on Puckpedia, but, they're going to have a lot more flexibility by way of $14 million to use. And if you get rid of, Mika Zibanejad as well, I don't mean to phrase it that way, excuse me, if you do trade him, then, that opens up a lot more. And it sounds like that could be part of the plans this summer too. So to get into the specifics of the trade, Elliotte Friedman has this, and the trade looks like it's going to be Krider and a mid-round pick to the Anaheim Ducks for a guy that we covered the other day, and that's Carey Terrence. We'll get more into him in just a bit as well, and a mid-round pick. So this is pretty tidy work, I think, and obviously I don't think it could have just been Krider in this deal because they're taking on his full salary, so I'm not surprised that there is a draft pick involved. But Vince Mercogliano, and I'll pop it up here on screen. This happened literally a minute ago before we started recording, that he's still trying to nail down the exact specifics. It'll be Krider and a 4th round pick going the other way to the Anaheim Ducks, and Carey Terrence and a 3rd round pick coming back to the New York Rangers. So the Rangers are getting a 3rd round pick and a prospect out of this. I don't know if they're going to use that pick. I don't know if they're going to plan on developing the player in Carey Terrence, or flipping him for something else like a Jason Robertson that we brought up in the past, but that is something for another video. It's going to be interesting to see what happens with that. But what a run for Chris Kreider in New York. We can kind of jump into, Chris Kreider, because this might be one of the last times we talk about him on the channel. He will be moving on to the Anaheim Ducks. A great career. You can see here from the JFresh chart, his advanced analytics over his career are absolutely unbelievable. If you look at what he's done in terms of, his career as a New York Ranger, he's 3rd in goals all time. He's 10th in points, 2nd in game-winning goals, 1st in playoff goals in the entire history of this franchise, 3rd in playoff points, 1st in playoff game-winning goals, and he's been traded. So I would argue, Bret, and we can kind of get into it now, that when it's all said and done, when he retires, he will have his jersey up in the rafters. His number will be retired. He is quite literally, I think, at least in my eyes, in some people's eyes, I'm sure some people will, disagree in the comments, or there's varying, opinions and stuff like that. But at least in my eyes, I feel like he is one of the greatest Rangers of all time. And it was nice that we got to see him play the last couple of years. But how do you feel about that?
Well, Darius, I have a bit of a different stance here. Now, while Chris Kreider, I appreciate everything he's done as a Ranger, one of the greatest Rangers all time, like you just said right there. I mean, the guy is clutch. 1st all time in playoff goals, like you showed on the screen, and also 1st in playoff game-winning goals. And Darius, we can't forget what that man did last postseason. We keep talking about it in the semifinal against the Carolina Hurricanes in Game 6. I mean, if Chris Kreider doesn't put the team on his back, get that hat trick, that's going to a Game 7. And you and I both know how momentum works in the league, how Game 7, anything could happen, and the Rangers would have had their backs against the wall. All the pressure on the Rangers, who weirdly enough were playing better on the road last postseason. So the pressure definitely would have been high. The tension would have been high in Madison Square Garden. So it's just wild that we went from Chris Kreider picking up hats on his lawn last year to now being in this position where he's traded off to Anaheim. Like so many Rangers, it seems that's where the Rangers go whenever they got to get rid of some veterans. They just call up Anaheim, and it seems to work out. But at the end of the day, I don't see his jersey in the rafters. And the reason I say that, because, as I said, great playoff performer, clutch, all that stuff, leadership. But the Rangers were not able to win a Stanley Cup. I understand the success that they had, 5 conference finals, 1 Stanley Cup appearance in the Chris Kreider era. But if they were able to win that Stanley Cup, or any year, if they were able to just win 1 Stanley Cup, Darius, I believe Chris Kreider would have had his jersey up in the rafters. But that doesn't take away the fact that he is going to retire a Ranger. We've spoken about this. He'll sign a 1-day contract and retire a Ranger, and he'll always be welcome back to Madison Square Garden in open arms. But at the end of the day, it looked like the trajectory, he was on track to be up there in the rafters. But at the end of the day, they didn't achieve the ultimate goal, and I don't think that his jersey will be up there.
I think it's, a lot of people are going to have different opinions, and this is still raw and fresh. So let us know in the comments how you feel about that. I feel like, in terms of individual success, like he's certainly up there with the greats, but you are right. They didn't achieve any team success. And I mean, it depends how you value it. I think fans really just want a Stanley Cup at this point, right? Like an Eastern Conference final appearance is nice, but the fan base wants a Stanley Cup. And I think, to go back to what we were talking about at the start of the episode, is we are headed for a new era at this point. And I think that can be exciting, whether you like Chris Drury or not. And listen, I think that he is absolutely insane and makes some crazy decisions sometimes. I do believe that. But I can appreciate that he is doing everything that he can for the crest on the front of the jersey, not the name on the back of the jerseys, right? So I can appreciate that, and I think we're headed for that. One last thing I wanted to touch on before we wrap up is who the Rangers are getting in return, I guess. And again, great career for Chris Kreider, but I did want to touch on this. before we wrap up who the Rangers are getting in return. It is Carey Terrence. He plays for the Erie Otters. He is a prospect, or classified as a prospect still. He's a second-round pick from just 2 seasons ago, putting up some decent points. He was on Team USA's World Junior Hockey Championship team that won the gold medal this past season. He is the captain of the Erie Otters. And again, he looks like to be a pretty decent prospect, but I don't know if he's long for this team. Bret, any final thoughts on the return of this trade? Because again, I feel like this is a player that it's tidy work. It really is from Chris Drury in this trade, but I feel like this is a player that's going to be packaged to go out and get another player, whether it's a left shot defenseman or maybe a crazy trade that could include Jason Robertson.
Right, and we've spoken about Carey Terrence here a little bit. He can't be ignored. Obviously, he's part of this deal, but the ultimate goal of this trade, and we've spoken about this was essentially a salary dump.
Yep.
You know, the Rangers wanted to clear that $6.5 million, and Chris Drury was able to do that. So I would consider that a win. Not only a win for the Rangers, we're going to break this down further in other videos, but I do believe this makes sense for the Anaheim Ducks as well. But in terms of Carey Terrence, this is a guy that his first 2 years, in the OHL, he didn't play that great. You can see those minus numbers there. He was when he was on the ice, the team did not do well. But these last 2 seasons, he's really stepped up his game. As you can see there, this last season, it looks like there was a dip in his play, but that's really because he played 11 less games, so the stats are going to kind of reflect that. But this is a guy that is close to a point per game player, and I know it's the OHL, but this is a young kid, you know, a former former second-round pick, I believe. And like I said, he's young. He's got some size. He's got some skill. He's got some speed. Now, I'm not saying he's going to turn into a star or a superstar player, but if the Rangers do want to hold on to him, I could see a guy like Mike Sullivan developing this kid. You know, Mike Sullivan likes a young, aggressive type of play style when it comes to the offensive game. We've seen him develop guys like Jake Gensel, for instance. So I do believe this kid has some potential. He was the captain of his team, so that shows some leadership qualities right there. I've seen highlights of him where he's really able to when he gets to top speed, he's pretty elusive. So whether or not the Rangers keep this kid, I still think it was a good trade. Made sense for both parties, but I could see him being, you know, maybe a 4th liner for the Rangers in the future, a guy that can move in between 3rd and 4th line, just a depth piece at the end of the day, Darius. But if they do want to flip him in a Jason Robertson deal, that's something we're going to have to break down further in another video as well, because that's becoming more realistic by the day, especially now after this trade.
I think it's very real at this point. I think that's what Chris Drury has in mind. I think he has his hand in a lot of cookie jars right now, so we will see what ends up happening. But let us know in the comments how you feel about the trade. Let it all out. We know this is a tough day for Rangers fans for sure, but it is a new era, and I think that is something to be excited about as well. But of course, you know, Chris Kreider has to be celebrated as well for his time as a New York Ranger. And like you mentioned too, Carey Terrence, whether they keep him or not, you know, if they do keep him, should be a useful player, should be an NHL player, should make the NHL. But if they don't, it's part of a package deal for something that, you know, probably, or a person who will make an impact at the NHL level immediately. So it is exciting times, I think, heading into next season, because there is change. The last era, they weren't able to get it done. Now we're headed towards a new one. It is exciting to think about. So let us know how you feel in the comments. And if you haven't yet, hit that subscribe button so you can stay up to date with everything New York Rangers.